Fayetteville was a town that thrived on whispers. Tucked between the folds of the Ozark Mountains, its people leaned on gossip the way other towns leaned on scripture. And no whisper traveled faster than the name Clara Whitlock. She lived alone in a weather-beaten cabin on the northern ridge. Her hair, dark as crow feathers, had long lost its youthful shine. Her dresses were plain and always black. By 1877, Clara was known by one title alone, the widow on the hill. The reason? She had buried 3 husbands before she turned 30. The first died slowly, the second violently, the third as though his very flesh had been consumed from the inside. Children dared each other to run up and touch her fence, then ran shrieking with laughter as though chased by ghosts. Men muttered prayers if her shadow touched theirs. The preacher himself avoided her lane, but Clara's eyes told another story. Eyes too tired for malice, too hollow for joy. They were eyes that carried a secret weight, something no one dared to ask about, something even she did not fully understand. Autumn crept over the Ozarks in slow, rusty strokes. One morning, as the leaves turned red and gold, a man rode into town. His horse was lean, his face marked by travel, and his hands scarred in ways no plow could explain. His name was Elias Boone, and though he claimed to be searching for work, folks noticed where his eyes lingered, always toward the ridge, toward the widow's cabin. At the marketplace, he approached Clara. She had just purchased a basket of apples when he stopped in front of her. His voice was low, deliberate. "Widow Whitlock," he said, "curses linger in bloodlines." Clara froze. The basket slipped from her hands, apples rolling across the dirt. The market fell silent. Nobody ever addressed her directly, let alone in such a strange way. She wanted to deny him, to walk away. But something in his tone struck a nerve, a strange familiarity that made her bones ache. The words pulled Clara back into memory, memories she had buried. Her first husband, Henry, had been a kind farmer. One summer, sores spread across his skin. Doctors prescribed tonics, but nothing slowed the decay. His lips cracked, his eyes hollowed, and within months he was gone. Her second husband, Thomas, had been strong, a hunter. Yet whispers tormented him in his final days. He screamed of a woman singing in the woods, her song slicing his mind. They found him dead by the hearth, nails buried in his own chest. Her third, James, wasted away in weeks. His body shrank, his flesh clinging to bone as though drained. On the night he died, Clara swore she heard a lullaby floating through the window. 3 husbands, 3 funerals, each death stranger than the last. The preacher stopped visiting. The neighbors crossed the street when she passed. The pattern was undeniable, but was it truly her fault? Or something darker? Clara was chopping wood near her cabin when Elias appeared, his voice cutting through the crack of the axe. "You mustn't sleep near these mountains," he said, eyes darting to the tree line. "The soil here remembers blood. It clings to it." Clara glared. "And what do you know of my blood?" He hesitated, then answered, "Enough to know curses don't start with the dead. They start with the living, those who carry what was promised." Clara's chest tightened. She turned away. But that night her dreams were restless. She saw her grandmother's wrinkled hands passing her a rosary, heard the old woman's whisper, "Never bind yourself where the woods sing." The townsfolk told stories to frighten children. They called it the flesh-eater's song. It was said that deep in the Ozark woods, a spirit woman sang a lullaby that pulled travelers off the road. Those who vanished were never seen again. Those who returned spoke of a figure in rags, eyes hollow, demanding offerings of flesh. Clara once laughed at those tales. But when James lay dying, she had heard the lullaby, faint but certain, weaving through the night until his final breath. And now, Alone in her cabin, she heard it again, louder, closer. Terrified, Clara lit a candle and pressed her back to the wall. The flame flickered violently, stretching the shadows across her room. "Show yourself," she whispered. Silence. Then knock, knock, knock. The sound rattled her door. She clutched the candle, her breath quickening. When she opened the door, no one was there, only the thick woods beyond. But on the porch lay something that made her blood freeze. Her late husband's handkerchief, torn and stained with something dark. The next morning, Elias barged into her cabin, face grim. "That song you hear," he said, "is older than Fayetteville, older than these mountains." Clara's voice shook. "What do you know?" He opened a leather book, its pages covered in strange markings. "Your great-grandmother begged the spirit for healing during a fever that nearly wiped out her children. The flesh-eater granted her 3 years of health, but in return, every Whitlock marriage would rot, husband by husband, flesh by flesh, until someone faced her in the woods." Clara staggered. "You lie." But her heart knew the truth. That evening, Clara sat by the graves of her 3 husbands. Wind rattled the branches overhead. The faint lullaby drifted again through the trees. Tears stung her eyes. No more. She stood, returning inside. With steady hands she packed a satchel, bread, salt, the rosary. She braided her hair tight. At dawn, Elias found her at the edge of the woods. "If the curse ends only in the forest," she said, "then I will end it, with or without you." He sighed. "Then I walk with you." They walked for hours beneath thickening fog. The deeper they went, the quieter the forest became. No bird sang, no branch cracked. At last, they reached a clearing. In its center loomed a stone altar, blackened and cracked, ringed with bones. Clara's stomach turned. "God have mercy." Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "She comes where fear is strongest. Hold fast." The air grew colder. A humming filled the clearing, soft and sweet like a mother's lullaby. From the fog emerged a figure, tall, draped in tattered rags, her face hidden. The stench of rot thickened the air. "Widow Whitlock," the figure hissed, her voice layered with many tongues. "Your blood owes me." Clara lifted the rosary, voice trembling. "Take me then, but spare those who come after." The figure's hollow laugh echoed. "Flesh is not bargained. Flesh is taken." The ground shook. The altar oozed fresh blood. The spirit lunged. Elias stepped forward, arms raised. Suddenly, the scars on his hands glowed blue, symbols pulsing like fire beneath his skin. The spirit shrieked and recoiled. Clara gasped. "You carry the marks!" Elias gritted his teeth. "My family has guarded this curse for generations. I was sent to end it, but I cannot without you." The spirit howled. 2 debts, twice the flesh. Only then did Clara understand. They had to face this together. Elias poured salt in a circle. "Stand inside. Don't move." Clara obeyed, clutching the rosary. The lullaby grew deafening, making her ears bleed. Her chest ached as though unseen claws tore through her ribs. "Pray," Elias shouted. Clara's voice cracked as she whispered the Lord's Prayer. Tears streamed down her face, dripping onto the salt. The spirit ripped off her rags, revealing a withered, fleshless face. Empty sockets glowed with hunger. The woods quaked with her scream. The spirit clawed at the salt, smoke hissing from her skin. "You break what was promised," she shrieked. Clara lifted the rosary high. "Then I make a new promise. No Whitlock shall ever feed you again." She slammed the beads to the ground. Light exploded from the circle, burning the altar, the bones, the spirit herself. The lullaby ended in a strangled wail. Silence fell. When the smoke cleared, Elias collapsed. His glowing scars had burned deep, his hands blackened. Clara fell to her knees. "Elias, stay with me." He smiled weakly. "The curse needed blood. Better mine than yours." Tears poured down her cheeks. "Why help me?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Because curses don't have to end in fear. They can end in love." With that, his eyes closed forever. Clara walked back alone, carrying only Elias's journal. His body had turned to ash within the circle. The townsfolk stared as she entered Fayetteville. But this time, no one whispered. No one crossed themselves. The shadow she once carried seemed gone. In the weeks that followed, Clara visited neighbors, helped deliver babies, cooked for the sick. Children no longer ran from her fence. Men greeted her in the square. She still grieved her husbands, and Elias most of all. But now their deaths felt like more than tragedy. They had paved the way for freedom. Late one night, Clara opened Elias's journal. Among records of curses and rituals, she found sketches of her face, drawn in charcoal, notes of her kindness in the marketplace, lines about her strength despite sorrow. He had known her long before he spoke to her. He had come not only as a guardian, but as a man who believed she was worth saving. Her tears fell onto the pages, not of fear, but of gratitude. Years passed. Clara aged, but she never married again. Instead, she became known as a healer, a woman of wisdom. She told children not of curses, but of courage, not of spirits, but of love that could outlast death. When asked about Elias, she smiled softly. "He was the stranger who gave me back my life, the one who proved that sacrifice is love's truest form." Hunters roamed the Ozarks freely. Families picnicked by the woods. Never again was the flesh-eater's lullaby heard. The altar crumbled, reclaimed by moth. Yet some swore that at dusk they saw two figures walking hand in hand, a man with scarred hands, a woman in black. No one felt fear, only peace. On her final day, Clara sat by her window, sunlight spilling across the ridge. She held the rosary, whispering Elias's name. Her breath slowed, her lips curved into a smile, and she slipped peacefully into rest. In Fayetteville, her story lived on, not as the widow's curse, but as the widow's blessing, a tale that reminded generations that, even in the darkest places, love and sacrifice could break chains of fear and turn flesh and death into a legacy of light.